Hello, Uggies Worldwide. I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. Today's question comes from Gerry Moore. He's Victor Echo 7, Bravo Delta Mike, and he has a question about the very essence of ham radio. He says, "Hi Dave, love your videos and congrats on number 400. Here's a philosophical question for you. When is ham radio not ham radio?" He says, "When I mention IRLP, which is a technique, it's an analog technique, you can talk to your local repeater, and then the repeater has a backbone of connections, and it can connect to some other specific repeater, and then you can talk to hams on that side. It's sort of a natural outgrowth of the internet, saying, well, if we connect a repeater backbone, then people here can talk to people here. It is a natural outgrowth of what's called linking. We have here on the western slope a linked series of repeaters on 70 centimeters. And there's a repeater in Junction, a repeater up in the mountain just behind us called Water Dog. And it goes all the way down into New Mexico. And if you talk on one of these repeaters, it comes out on all of them. Now, where that is useful is for emergency use, and also an occasional short rag chew for hams that know each other that are quite a distance apart. It's not recommended for casual rag chewing use because it ties up all these different repeaters and just two people are talking. I have kind of a bad taste in my mouth from those. I remember when I was in Los Angeles and was commuting to Northrop every day, that I would talk on a 220 repeater that was quite popular, and I was making friends and had lots of people to talk with. And then somebody got the crazy idea that they wanted to link these repeaters to repeaters up and down the California coast. Well, the problem is that the actual usage of the repeater plummeted to near zero. Because if you talk two people together, you are messing up the whole chain. So it was, quote, for emergency use. And the repeater just, the activity just disappeared on it. IRLP is a little bit of an outgrowth of this, where you can connect to specific repeaters. Now that's fine because it's an outgrowth of the linking idea. This is important. It's an outgrowth of the linking idea, not something they did just because there was an internet. An internet is the backbone that connects everything these days, okay? So you can connect to a specific repeater and then jabber all you want, and then the link comes down, which is an improvement because then you can chat to people far and wide and you don't have to worry about tying up an entire network of repeaters. So that said, let's go back here to Gerry's question. When I mention IRLP, I sometimes get and he's got it in all caps here, violent reaction from some fellow hams who say that because the main part of the QSO connection, I guess the longest distance part of the QSO connection, is provided by the internet, and so therefore it is not ham radio. What about digital radio? Yes, the QSO connection is made by radio, but it is a computer talking to a computer with no human involved. Some hams would also say this is not ham radio. What do you think? Is it silly to even ask the question? Well, Gerry, there are, as in every field, a number of people who are tradition bound, who think that it's not ham radio unless it's either single sideband or CW. There is an even older group of hams who say it's not ham radio unless it's AM or CW. There are, now usually the people who allow single sideband and CW also allow RTTY as a digital mode. It used to be that you actually had to have the machine, and it was connected to something called a terminal unit, which connected to your transmitter and receiver. This is just people who can't adapt to change, okay? And they're looking for something called the spirit of amateur radio. Well, let me tell you what the spirit of amateur radio is. The spirit of amateur radio gets back to the 6 fundamental reasons that the FCC allocates valuable spectrum space to ham radio operators who are operating in a non-commercial manner and aren't going to make any money for the FCC. It's because it provides a pool of trained operators for emergencies. It also pushes forward the state of the art of communications. That's very important, the state of the art of communications. And combining amateur radio with the internet is an example of this, pushing forward the state of the art of communications. It's also to build goodwill with foreign countries. And the D-Star and DMR and C4FM systems allow us to connect worldwide, even if you're a tech, thus meeting one of the purposes stated in ham radio. The reason ham radio exists is not because of just public service or just because of building bridges with other people in other countries. It is a combination of all of these that includes good old-fashioned rag chewing, even if on AM, all the way to the state-of-the-art ways where people today are making mesh networks by taking old Wi-Fi equipment and repurposing it for ham radio uses. As it turns out, there's an overlap on one of the Wi-Fi bands with one of the ham radio bands. So you can do that and use your amateur radio call signs. You get new software for those old routers and put them in place to build these mesh networks. So there is pure internet technology being used for ham radio. Now, these hybrid ideas of using the internet with your radio has found its ultimate expression in hotspots. Now, this is where I get a little close to asking if this is ham radio. I'm communicating, and really my radio ought to have like a milliwatt output. I'm communicating the 2 feet to the hotspot, and then it goes out over the internet. And I have wondered why I haven't seen these little hotspots with a microphone jack and a headphone jack, and you just tune in the frequency you want. And in other words, it just avoids that 2-foot link that's ham radio. I haven't seen that yet. Maybe that does exist and I don't know about it. But that to me would be problematic from a legal point of view because it will go out a repeater at the other end. Although with these hotspots, you can pick a chat room that only 2 or 3 people are members of and have very private conversations doing that. So, whatever. But I will say this. If you are being innovative, using amateur radio techniques in combination with other techniques, that's very much part of the spirit of amateur radio, and in fact is one of the primary purposes that the FCC even allocates frequencies to us for ham radio use. We're going to see gradually, it's going to take a while, more digital voice on HF radio, although those who are into digital voice tend to find VHF, UHF more convenient because you get a quicker connection to the internet than you do over HF. HF is a lousy channel for digital communications. It really is. But it can be made to work, and there are digital packages out there. Although, as far as I know, none of them are actually free, so that really hinders. Hams have traditionally been a cheap lot, and if they can make something for free, they'd rather do that. The original hams, of course, had to wind the coils for their own headphones. I mean, that's how rudimentary it was back then. So the tradition of making things for ham radio is very much part of amateur radio. So, Gerry, here's what I would say to somebody who gets violent about a reaction that says that this so-and-so isn't part of ham radio, is just to say, you old fogey, you're just not used to change. It's very much of ham radio. It's very much part of ham radio. You need to get with the program. So anyway, that's what I would say. So there you have it. And until we next meet, 73.